We have a couple of new cards to look at, though, from Alliance Insight, which releases in the OCG, if I remember correctly, in 4 days. At this point, we are not missing many cards, but here's a couple more that they have announced recently. We have at first I thought this was just an alt art to Dark Magician Girl. Turns out it isn't. Turns out it's a new card. And it's called Dark Magician Girl, the Magician's Apprentice. Level 6 Dark Spellcaster, 2000 attack, 1700 defense. You can only special summon with the first effect of this card's name once per turn. You can only use the second effect of this card's name once per turn. You can special summon this card by discarding one other card. If summoned this way, its name becomes Dark Magician Girl. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add a Shining Sarcophagus from your deck to your hand. Gains 300 attack for each monster in either graveyard that mentions Shining Sarcophagus. So, not much to be said here, honestly. It's a relatively straightforward card. It's another one of those apprentice kind of cards where you discard one to special and then you get a search, very similar to Nightmare Apprentice, which is also a very good card, as we know. This concept is powerful. You know, it's extension. It can be a starter. And for the Shining Sarcophagus archetype, this is a good card. However, the problem is, like, does this make the Shining Sarcophagus deck good enough? It definitely makes it better. It definitely makes it better, but the question is, does it make it competitively viable? Which, I mean, the deck's already not terrible, so who knows? You know, it's probably not going to be like the best deck in the room at like a YCS, but it does give it a little bit of an extra. You know, we've seen this deck top some regionals in the past, right? When it came out after Legacy of Destruction, I think was the set. People have messed around with it. People felt like it was okay, fine deck to play, nothing crazy. And this will just like kind of strengthen it a little bit extra. Barry adds a Magician Girl. Barry Magician Girl. Barry Magician Girl. If this card's normal summoned, you can add a Magician Girl monster from your deck to your hand once per turn. Targets this card. Okay. Yeah, you could now search this with Barry Magician Girl if you want to play that as your normal summon. I do think the Shining Sarcophagus deck already has normal summons though, right? Like, aren't you running like Gadget Trio as a normal summon, for example? Or can you just special summon those? I think those are normal summons, right? So I don't know. You do have the option to play another normal summon, I guess. It's worth noting, yeah. So that's that. Then we have an interesting piece of Ryu-Ge support. Well, I don't actually know how interesting it is yet, but that potentially means we're gonna look at, give me a second, hold up. Alliance Insight. Are there still cards missing from this set, or do we have the full picture yet? That's what I want to know, because there's still some missing. Okay, let me get a full list somewhere. So here on Wikipedia, it shows 22 and 23 is missing. 33 and 34 is missing. 4 cards. 5, 6, 7, 8 cards missing here. So there's 8 more cards missing. And you could once again educated guess, which could 100% be incorrect, but they're announcing Ryu-Ge support, which came out together with Malice and Ryu-Ge. Which is obviously a little bit of a scary thought. It's a little bit of a scary thought because, I mean, Malice and Ryu-Ge are already pretty dominant. So, well, I mean, it's going to be very interesting, to say it mildly, on what kind of support they give these two decks. There has already been, I don't know if I can find it real quick, but there's already been, like, I feel like they've announced Malice stuff for their YCS. like a playmat that has artwork on it that isn't on any Malice card yet. So let me see if I can find it real quick. It's probably been a couple days since they've announced this. I don't even know if they posted it here. This one I think is where they get it. Yeah, so this is YCS Japan, where you get the Dragon Ruler playmat, which looks sick, by the way. The sleeves too. Holy, I love those accessories. But they've also announced the same for Malice. So there's a Malice playmat and a Malice sleeve, which shows either it's just like additional artwork for Malice, or it's just a new card. It could just be a new card, which now that I'm seeing that there's Ryu-Ge support in Alliance Insight, we might get these. We might get another wave of Malice support in this. But honestly, not much need to speculate because the set is going to drop in literally 4 days. So we're going to find out this week. Let's look at this Ryu-Ge support, which is probably in need of some Ryu-Ge is in need of some really, really broken cards in order to be considered viable, because that deck is not good right now. We have Realized Reincarnation Ryu-Ge Anva. Level 10 Dark Dragon Pendulum Effect monster. Badass artwork, by the way. 3000 attack, 2100 defense. It has a pendulum scale of 11. Which, hold up. Let me see what the scale of the other one is. I'm assuming the other one has a low scale, because that would make sense. Yes, the other one is a scale 0. Okay. And the Ryu-Ges are level 10s, so you would need a scale 11 to pendulum summon them. You can only use the second pendulum effect of this card's name once per turn. You cannot pendulum summon except Ryu-Ge monsters. This effect cannot be negated. When an opponent's card or effect resolves that was activated in response to the activation of your Ryu-Ge spell or effect, you can negate that effect, then destroy this card. Okay, so this acts like a pseudo Called by the Grave, because I think one really important card for this archetype is the field spell, so you can protect the field spell from being interrupted with this. And it doesn't activate, right? So, yeah. Monster effect. You can only use the first, second, and third effect once per turn. You can tribute a Ryu-Ge monster from hand or field, except another Anva. Special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summoned, you can target a card on the field, destroy it. If this card is destroyed, you can place a Ryu-Ge continuous spell trap from deck, grave, or banishment face upon your field. Okay, a lot of stuff happening here. It is a level 10 itself. It's just good. Is it that good though? Is it that good? It just feels, it feels okay. You pop it with the ritual and you get 2 spells for the price of... So the ritual says... No, the ritual can't destroy this. The ritual monster reads as a pendulum effect. During your main phase, you can add a non-pendulum Ryu-Ge card from your deck to your hand, then destroy this card. You can't destroy the other scale. You have to destroy itself. If a monster on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect while this card's in your extra deck, you could tribute a level 10 Ryu-Ge. If you do special summon this card, then you can apply this effect. Destroy up to 2 cards you control. If you do, place up to that many Ryu-Ge continuous spells from your deck face up on your field. So, in theory, right? In theory, there are 3 different Ryu-Ge spell continuous spells, right? For each attribute or each main deck monster, they have 1. There's also... No, that's a quick play. Okay. So what they want you to do is... they want you to summon this guy, destroy itself, and the new pendulum, which means you get all 3, right? You get all 3 continuous spells if you pop those 2, because this one is going to place 2 of them, and this one places the 3rd one. Sure. My issue with this entire thing is that this doesn't even feel like... This just feels like not a consistency card, which I feel like is what that deck needed, but okay. We have a new trap card. which is a continuous trap card, which you can also place with this guy. You can only use the second and third effect once per turn each. Your opponent cannot target Ryu-Ge monsters you control with card effects. If you have a Ryu-Ge pendulum monster on your field or extra deck, you can shuffle 2 Ryu-Ge monsters from your hand, graveyard, and or banishment into the deck, then target a monster on the field destroyed. If this card is destroyed, you can set a non-continuous Ryu-Ge trap from your deck, graveyard, or banishment. Wait, what Ryu-Ge traps are there? Ryu-Ge Rivalry. Special summon a Ryu-Ge from hand, deck, or graveyard. Return to the hand to your end phase. Banish this card from your grave. Recycle. Okay. Here's a few things. Here's a few things I like about this deck. It feels like these cards are very cool. And it feels like it has a really cool grindy aspect to it. The problem with this deck competitively is that you play so much stuff that doesn't actually do anything. Like, you're gonna draw the trap card, even some of the continuous spells like just don't actually do much, right? Like, you draw your Dino Domain and it's like, okay, doesn't do anything on its own, because all it does is it gives you a monster effect negation if you already have stuff. Then there's the wind one, the worm winds one, which is also just reactive. None of the continuous spells do anything on their own. And the monsters also don't do anything really on like, they're not really, they don't really do anything. So it's just a deck that's full of big dudes that don't do anything. And so you really need to open with the ritual monster. And this doesn't change this. This doesn't really give you more ways to get started. It just gives you even better grind game if you get going, which is cool, but it's not what the deck needed, I think. Well, okay. I think there's a very, very high likelihood that the Malice support or Ryziel support is more relevant, simply because, I mean, if they even make more. Simply because those decks are already competent decks to begin with. Like, these cards are not bad, but the concept they are throwing them in is just not good enough. And they also don't help make the concept good enough. You can search both of the Pendulum Dragons with Melody. Sure. Okay, I guess you can play Melody of the Awakening Dragons to have a little bit of a consistency tool then. But no. Here's the most exciting card, honestly, out of this entire bunch. We've got the Psalm of Kings, which is a normal trap card and is the third entry into the Dominus archetype, quote unquote. Let's just call it an archetype. Which I was wondering if they were going to continue making more Dominus cards, because they have in theory covered all the attributes, right, by the 2, because each of them locks you out of 3 attributes. This one works a little bit differently, and it's very interesting, and I do think it's a very good card, but also very well designed. So here's what it does. It's a normal trap card. You can only activate 1 card with this card's name per turn. If you have no monsters in your graveyard, you can activate this card from your hand. When your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, you cannot activate monster effects in the hand, graveyard, and banishment until the end of the next turn after this card activated from the hand resolves. Also, negate that effect. Then, if you have a trap card in your graveyard, you can add a Dominus card from your deck to your hand. This card is very interesting, but I think the coolest part about this card is that it is balanced in such a way that you cannot just throw it into any deck like you would with like an infinite impermanence or something. I mean, something like this card is even different in its restriction than Dominus Impulse or Dominus Purge, because it doesn't have anything to do with attributes. It just says strictly you cannot activate monster effects in hand, graveyard, or banishment during your next turn, right? Because I mean, this is a hand trap, right? Let's not pretend like it's a normal trap card. It is a hand trap, or rather it is something that I find very cool, which is something that all the Dominus cards also share, is that going first, you will set it like a normal trap card, but going second, it has the added benefit of letting you activate it from hand by taking some sort of restriction. You would never, I don't think you would ever play this card in a deck that needs to activate stuff in the graveyard or banishment. Like if you're playing, let's say, a Malice deck, or you're playing a any other like meta deck that needs one of these locations to function, you would not play this card in it. But there are a couple of decks that this really benefits. Mostly like trap-oriented strategies like Labyrinth or something, where if you go first, this is a very good card and it doesn't have any restrictions when you go first. But if you go second, you don't actually care that this is like a better this is a better effect veiler essentially, and it's especially good if you can pair it with other Dominus cards or Imperm, for example, right? You can't activate Lady. You can chain Lady to this if you really care about it. You can chain all these cards because it just says you can't activate monster effects after this card resolves. So like if you have those cards in your hand, just chain them if you really want them. Like you can activate this card and then chain a furniture to put a trap card in the graveyard, and then you will be able to search a Dominus card with this. No, you can't. You can't chain. Why not? Of course you can chain to it. It says until the end of the next turn after this card activated from the hand resolves. You can obviously chain to it. Obviously you can. Can't you still use field monsters? Yeah, you can still use monsters on the field, but it's just that most traditional like combo decks or Yu-Gi-Oh decks say that they need multiple locations to work in. Like take any of the meta decks from recent years, and you would find that they will have something that activates in hand, graveyard, or banished, right? Like there's isn't this pretty crazy going first in Fiendsmith Kashtira, maybe better than Judgment? It's really good going first if you have a trap card in your graveyard and your deck plays a Dominus card anyways, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing that you have to also realize with this card is this card is only playable or only good in decks that already play Dominus cards. Because that's the real advantage of this card, is if you have a trap in your graveyard, it's really, really good. If you don't have a trap in your graveyard, this card is basically a worse Imperm or worse effect veiler, with the small caveat that you can't dodge this because it doesn't target, which is very good. But if you don't have a trap in your graveyard and you're not searching a Dominus card, then this card is not much better than Veiler or Imperm. Oh, new Malice was announced. Okay, we'll look at that in a second. That's exciting. We'll wait for the translation to arrive. But once the new link me the translation once the new Malice support is out, so we can look at it. I think that this card is phenomenal, but only in decks. Basically, this card has double restriction because it also has the Dominus restriction on it. Whichever Dominus card you play, because you're never going to play this card without a Dominus card. So your deck has to be able to use Dominus Purge or Dominus Impulse and not care about activating effects from Grave, Banish, or Hand, which is essentially a smaller subgroup of decks, but most of them are slower decks, which I think is why this card is well designed, because it doesn't fit into any of these fast-paced like hand trap slinging decks, right? Is it ashable? Of course it's ashable, yeah, because it could add a card from your deck to your hand. It's ashable every time, even if you don't have a trap yet, because you could still have a trap in the graveyard on resolution. It checks on resolution whether you have a trap in your grave, so it's always ashable. But yeah, very good card. I'm excited for it. I think the balancing on it is good, because it's a powerful card that makes you think where you can use it, but it doesn't obviously fit into any decks. Even decks that don't really use Graveyard, Hand, or Banish, like Ryu-Ge, for example, could play this card. because Sword Ryu-Ge and X Ryu-Ge don't activate to summon from hand. So in theory, yes, if you really wanted to, you could play this card in Ryu-Ge. But the thing is, why would you? Because you're not going to play Dominus, the other Dominus cards in Ryu-Ge, because their restrictions are too harsh. And Ryu-Ge also almost never has a trap card in the graveyard to begin with. So why would you play this card if you can't search a Dominus card with it relatively consistently? It is just a worse imperm, right? So yeah, you gotta think outside of the box to use this card. But if you do that, and if you find a good way to use it, it's phenomenal. And that's why I like it.